Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, we'll start with the Washington Commanders hiring Eric Bienemy as their new offensive coordinator and assistant head coach.
So I have several things to say about this, Jack. So I'm going to make this our Labatt Tuck's Take of the week. It's presented by Labatt Blue Light, the pristine Canadian Pilsner. Enjoy your beers together so you can live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Three things jump out to me about this Eric Bienemy move. Number one, he clearly, obviously felt like he needed to do this to give himself a better chance to be a head coach. It's kind of a shame that that's the case, but I think he's right. I think if he goes to Washington and he's calling the plays and they have success on offense, I think he will get a lot more of the credit than he was in Kansas City. And I think he'll have a better chance to be a head coach. That's part one. Part two, I read an interesting article from Roger Sherman of The Ringer, just talking about Eric Bienemy. I guess two things jump out to me. First of all, he's been interviewed for head coaching jobs 16 times by 15 different teams. So the team I think I would be most interested in talking to about Eric Bienemy is the Houston Texans. I mean, because people obviously, the color of his skin, race is talked about a lot when it comes to Bienemy. The Texans, 3 years in a row, have hired a black head coach that wasn't Eric Bienemy. David Culley, Lovie Smith, D'Amico Ryans. So I would love for someone to be able to interview ownership or Nick Caserio for the Texans and say, okay, 3 years in a row, you went with a black head coach, but not Eric Bienemy? Because they probably know more than anybody else. And then the other thing is he wrote in the article that reportedly Bienemy doesn't interview well. Well, that's pretty obvious, right? I mean, if he's been interviewed 16 times and hasn't gotten one of them, that would seem to be the case, which I think is a bigger question. How important is a job interview to actually doing the job? Like on the one hand, when Nick Sirianni, his initial press conference for the Eagles was not good. Now, that's not a job interview, but that was not good. And I think Nick would even admit that to you. But he's a really good head coach. I don't know how important a job interview is as it relates to being a head coach. I know this. I have some experience with hiring people for my small businesses or interns. I'll just say it's really hard to hire someone that doesn't have a good interview. Really hard. You talk to someone on the phone or whatever, or Zoom, and you're not feeling it. Really hard to then say, I'm still going to hire that person. So I actually think that's a bigger question as it relates to hiring in general, and in particular for football coaches. How important is the actual interview part of it as opposed to what they've proven with their players and their schemes, etc.?
Tuck's Takes.
The Carolina Panthers hired Thomas Brown from the Los Angeles Rams as their new offense coordinator.
Thomas got a bunch of interviews. So he obviously was a hot commodity because a lot of people were interviewing him, different play. I think he might have even gotten a couple of head coach interviews, but he definitely got a bunch of OC interviews, and the Panthers ended up bringing him in. And with that coaching staff they've got, that speaks very well of Thomas Brown.
Tuck's Takes.
The Arizona Cardinals find both their new coordinators going to the Browns for their quarterback coach Drew Petzing and the Eagles for their linebacker coach Nick Rallis.
I don't know much about Petzing. I do know Rallis is 29 years old and immediately becomes the youngest coordinator in the NFL. That's amazing. I mean, he'll be younger than a decent amount of the players out there in Arizona. He is very highly regarded. And the fact that Jonathan Gannon handpicked him as his coordinator speaks very well of Nick Rallis.
Tuck's Takes.
Even more coordinator news now. The Colts hiring Jim Bob Cooter as their new OC.
So he had some role like an offensive consultant with the Eagles in 2021. Then last year he went to Jacksonville, but obviously Shane Steichen, the new head coach in Indy, remembered what Jim Bob Cooter was like that 2021 year in Philadelphia and wanted to bring him along.
Tuck's Takes.
Saints running back Alvin Kamara was indicted on a battery charge.
This is from last year's Pro Bowl in Las Vegas. It is interesting to me, and I'm not being critical here, just how slow the legal process plays out. That it's more than a year since the incident took place, and now he's being indicted. Again, that's not a commentary on what he did or did not do, just something I always think is interesting. I mean, I don't know what else in life moves that slowly.
Tuck's Takes.
An underrated legend in New England, Patriots bring back Matthew Slater for his 16th season.
Just unbelievable. I mean, he's an outstanding young man. His dad played 20 years, Jackie Slater, as an offensive lineman. I don't know if Matt's going to get there. 16 seasons, we got to play 5 more years. That just sounds 16 seasons as a special teamer is wild. I actually thought he was going to be done. I'm a little bit surprised, based on his after the season press conference, kind of felt like he was going to be done, but evidently not.